Hi and welcome to Property People. Today we are joined with Ahmed Khan. Hello, Ahmed.
Are you right?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Good. Yeah. Well, I've been trying to get you to sit down with me for a little while because you are quite active in a specific space within property that has become quite a hot topic for a lot of people, and something that's caught my attention the turn of the year. I've always been trying to stay away from it, but I think it's something.
Why have you been trying to stay away from it?
Because it sounds like a lot of hard work.
Right.
Ahmed's been in property for over 2 years now. And if you don't mind, Ahmed, would it be it would be a good place to start? What were you doing before property? Just so we can get that.
Yeah, so I started 2 years ago, which is about, I would say, just before 2017, so like October 2016. Now, I finished university in September 2016, so a few months before that. And now, what a lot of people do is they kind of go into the corporate careers and all that sort of stuff. But I realized that if I was going to attempt something which is, let's just say, quote unquote, risky, it's the easiest time to do it. Because when you're 21, you don't have that much risk. Whereas if you have kids and a family and a mortgage, then, if something doesn't go your way and you've sort of spent all your time doing it, then it can have a lot bigger consequences. So I started looking into property as soon as I finished.
Okay.
This is about, now we're into about September, October, November 2016.
And when you say looking into it, what kind of things were you doing?
Well, I was just researching, going to different events, because see, what I thought before getting into property, that property was simply buy-to-lets. That you buy a property, you then put a tenant in there and you rent it out.
Yeah,
that was what I thought property was, and that's what I think a lot of people think property is, until they start to see all these different things like lease options and service accommodation and all these different things. So I was just researching in terms of what else could be done.
So reading books, going to events.
Yeah, books, networking events, magazines,
YouTube videos.
Surprisingly, there aren't that many.
Okay.
I don't know what your take is, but I don't think there are that many. I mean, last year or so, I've seen more and more.
Yeah.
But going back to 2.5 years ago, there wasn't that much on YouTube.
There's not that much, if I'm honest, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. So, yeah, that's a good point.
There's a lot of Americans on there.
Yes.
You find a lot of Americans on there, but there's not that many UK-based ones. And then, obviously, a lot of the things that work in the States might not necessarily work here.
And so why was it property that caught your eye? Why not stocks, shares? Why not Bitcoin? I mean, it might have been a bit early for Bitcoin, or at least for the craze.
Well, it would have been amazing for Bitcoin.
It would have been a good time for Bitcoin, to be fair.
Yeah. So with property, I think it's tried and tested.
Yeah.
In the sense that there's nothing new to invent for a lot of the simpler strategies like buy-to-let and those sort of things. And that's the reason I got into it. And a lot of the things you don't have to invent. You can kind of replicate a process which already exists, copy the process and make it work. And that's why I was interested in it, because I thought it was like a very safe way of doing it.
Yeah. Whereas
I tried other things before that, which is I tried an app and I tried to do something else. But I'll give you an example. I made an iPhone app, right? And
tell us about the iPhone app.
Yeah, so it was going to be a pretty cool app, because what it was going to do is, imagine you're out somewhere and you don't have a portable speaker. Like, let's say you're in a park or a beach or something, right? Well, what if I could play a song from my phone and it comes out from your phone as well at the same time?
Synchronized, so you get double the...
Yeah. So now we got like 10 phones connected and like a mega speaker, right?
That's not a bad idea.
It's pretty good, right? It's pretty good. But then, so we actually had a guy make it in India, and like it almost worked, but there was like a 1 second glitch.
Delay.
Yeah, like half a second glitch, so it wouldn't work. And if you had more than 2 phones, it would crash and all that sort of stuff. But, even if it did work, it's like, how do you begin marketing that? And how do you get the investment for that? And, there's so many variables in business, which you kind of have to figure out from scratch. But again, property, you can replicate what other people are doing. It's like, if you make something work in property, I'm sure I can learn from you and copy that across. Whereas an app is a different story, because, no two apps are exactly the same, and no two markets are exactly the same.
A lot more variables.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's kind of a new frontier. Just very quickly on that, do you not think with the app, with more development, that you could make it work, maybe in time?
You probably could, but obviously I didn't have much money to put into it, so I spent peanuts.
Yeah. Okay.
So obviously the developer I got wasn't exactly some big time developer. It's like we found some random guy. So I think if you stick some money into it, you can. But here's the other thing, right? Which is I finished uni and I didn't have a job at that point.
And what did you study?
I did economics.
Okay.
for 3 years. So didn't have a job at that point, and at the same time, I was figuring out all this sort of stuff. But it's like I knew if I didn't make something work in about 6 months or 8 or 12 months, I would, because of the practicality of life, I would go on and get a job.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it would have to happen at some point. So, it's cool that try and get all these tech apps and all that sort of stuff, but the payoff, it might work, it might not work. Whereas I needed something with a bit more certainty.
Yeah.
So my plan right now is I want to make enough quote unquote passive income from property.
Yeah.
And once I'm at that stage and I don't have to get a job for the rest of my life, I can go and try all these things.
Yeah.
But at least I've set myself up for that stage. Whereas if I try to do all of that now and it doesn't work and I have to go get a job, it's kind of cost me that opportunity at the same time.
Got you. So it sounds like property is something that you're going to do sooner rather. So you're going to do at some point. So sooner rather than later makes sense. Mm-hmm. You get that financial stability, and then you can go off and do these other ventures.
Well, I kind of call it like a bit of a runway in the sense that I said before that I thought I had about 6 months until I would sort of give in and get a job, right? Well, if through property you can make £2,000 a month, you bought some buy-to-let, or you did X, Y, and Z, you made £2,000 a month. The average UK income is about 26,000 per year, right? Which comes to about £2,000 a month.
Yeah.
So if you can make £2,000 a month from property, that means you've extended your runway in terms of how long before you have to get a job or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how I see property,
So
which
your
is
time for money.
Yeah, I feel like I'm buying myself time with property.
Right.
That if I, let's say I build up something which makes me £5,000 a month for the rest of my life, it's like I have no pressure to then go and get a job.
Okay.
Because that money's always coming in.
And this was all premeditated, so it was a thought process that you had, and you looked at a variety of different things, and property seemed to tick all the right boxes for you to be able to build up an income that was somewhat passive and give you your time back so that you could focus on other ventures, or has property become your kind of primary focus that you'd want to focus on?
Well, property is a primary focus for the time being. And it probably will be for like the next few years.
Right.
But I'm also interested in other things. Like, do I want to be doing this for the next 50 years? That's a different story, right?
Got you.
But I think I definitely have it as my main focus for at least the next 4, 5, 6 to build that base.
Yeah, yeah.
And even if I do it for 6, I'll be 30 at that point. So it's like I don't.
You are relatively young, and
I don't see the rush.
Cool stuff. Yeah,
I don't see the rush.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes people they set out and they say, I want to be a property developer and I want to build the next Shard or and that's what they're setting out to be. But by the sounds of it, you've tried a few different things already, and you've got having studied economics and done some other ventures, it sounds like you've got an eye for opportunity.
Well, the thing is, I feel like it's very safe, and it's probably like the most certain way because you can massively reduce your risk at the same time. Whereas sorry, my voice. As you'll know, that when it comes to property development, it sounds very fancy and like you're building all these things, but it can be very, very risky at the same time. Absolutely.
And in terms of so once you decided the beginning of your journey, so once you decided, right, property is going to be it, did you read any books?
Did I? I did.
Books? You like to read books?
Well, I read a lot actually. I try to read like at least like 2 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I try to read as much as I can, but
do you find that there's so some people? I do Audible books, and I tell people I read them, and they say you're cheating. But I don't. Do you differentiate between Audible and conventional reading?
I don't think there's anything wrong with Audible. I think it's a good way of getting a lot of information, especially when it's like if you're driving, you can't have a book in front of you at the same time, or like if you're like going for a run. So I think it's a cool way of like maximizing time, because the other side is, it's like the person who says you're cheating and they're going for a run. It's like they're just going for a run, whereas you're going for a run and you're doing an extra bit.
So what they want me to say really is that I listened to a book. I mean, is that something that I refuse to?
Fine.
I read the book. Somebody read it to me. It's like a bedtime story.
So do you feel? Because a lot of people, they say, "Oh, I read hundreds of books," and it's more so an ego thing that, "Oh, look how much I read and all that sort of stuff." But I read books like a textbook, which is I need a pen and I need a highlighter when I read something.
Ah, right.
And I write a lot.
You make annotations.
Yeah. I make a lot of notes and stuff. So my thinking is, if someone said I read 500 books last year, it's like, how do you retain any of that information?
Okay.
But it sounds cool that I read 500 books. But I was reading something that you're better off reading the same book 8 times than reading 8 different books.
Right.
Because every single time you pick up a bit more and you actually get those ideas in your mind and you actually do something about it. Whereas if you read 8 different ones, you've got hundreds of ideas, which you might have written down on a piece of paper or something, but you never do anything with.
There's a famous Bruce Lee quote. He said, I'd rather battle somebody that's done one kick 1,000 times than somebody's done 1,000 different kicks.
Well, exactly. And it's, so me, when people say, oh, I'll read hundreds of books, it's like, how the hell do you retain that much information? Whereas,
do you use Kindles?
No, I like to write in highlights, so I need a physical paper book.
Yeah, you say you're old-fashioned.
Yeah, I need to write that, write that stuff down. So that's the only way I kind of learn.
So what was did you read any property books, or how did you find the events? Like, how did you stumble across it? Is Google?
I read a few property books. Again, a lot of them were American. So if you search for property books, stuff like Rich Dad Poor Dad, those sort of things come up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And there were some UK based ones which were for progressive property.
Right.
I read those ones. I went to some of their events, and that's how I sort of got involved in the first place.
Yeah, because you've been quite successful having done some of their courses, right?
Yeah, so I've done some of their courses. I now speak for, I speak for them as well.
You're an international speaker?
If Dublin counts. No, it's Dublin and Wales. It's Dublin and Wales, so I've spoken in Dublin, Wales, and England.
There you go.
That's 3 countries. Now, I don't know what the official definition is in terms of,
Well, Dublin is totally another.
Dublin is. It's not even the UK.
They've got a different currency.
It's not even the UK. It's like it's a different currency. You have to cross a river to get there, which is like a big deal.
Big river.
It's not like it's not like a North London and South London. It's like across a plain river, and it's not in the UK.
Yeah.
So I'm claiming international.
No, so you should do. And it's next up the world. You got Dublin and then the rest of the world. So well done for getting Scotland. As far as you've got. And Scotland's next on the map. But yeah, so you've been one of the success stories out of going to these events and these courses and joining one of these educational institutions. Tell us about how that started and how that journey went, because it's really interesting, I think, for a lot of people starting out that they hear mixed reviews. They always see top performers, but then they also see some horror stories, and there's a lot of stuff in the middle. So it's interesting, I think, for especially people wanting to start in property, to hear somebody like yourself who's not been in it 10, 20 years, but has had really good success having joined a community like that.
Well, I mean, let's put aside what's worked for me and all that sort of stuff for 2 seconds, and let's just go from like a practical point of view, which is, I was speaking to someone the other day, and there was a 4-day property course for about £2,000, right? Which 4 days is a long time. So they cover taxes, they cover how to buy properties cheap, all those sort of things. And I said to them, and they were torn, like, should I do it or should I not do it, right? And I said, well, let's just look at this from like an investment point of view, no different to how you paint walls or buy like a bed and a wardrobe in a property. So let's say you invest £2,000 in this training course.
Yeah.
Are you going to, whether you do or you don't, are you going to go and buy properties anyway? And they were like, yeah, well, I'll buy properties regardless, whether I do this training or not. And I was like, well, do you think by investing £2,000 you'll save more than that, either on something to do with tax or something to do with how to refurb properties or how to buy cheap properties, or because of over 4 days you'll pick up hundreds of ideas. If you took one, would you save £2,000 somewhere? And they were like, yeah. Well, I was like, well, just treat it like that. Forget about the guy who made 20 grand or the guy who made $500,000, all that sort of stuff. Are you going to get more than 2 grand's worth of value or not?
So it's basically, are you going to get a return on your investment?
Oh yeah. Let's look at it no differently to how you furnish a property because you think you might get a better return because the tenant's going to come in and he's going to, I love furniture and all that sort of stuff. That's what it's about,
Absolutely. And
it's about, are you going to get more than 2 grand?
It's kind of like, am I going to save? The answer is pretty much almost yes. you didn't have much experience to draw upon beforehand, and you thought that this community would be able to provide you with enough to...
Well, I mean, the way I thought about it was I didn't really know anyone in property who was running a property business. So I knew people in property, like family members, but that was more so that they had other income coming in and they used that income to buy a property. But running a property business and just running a property business is a different story, because you know, you have to be able to scale up in order to build enough cash flow and those sort of things. It's not exactly the same.
It's one thing being a landlord for one or two properties. It's another thing of actually being full time in property and building a business out of it.
Because now you need to think, well, how am I going to raise investment? How am I going to pay the return? How long is it going to take? All those variables which you wouldn't have to if you had an income coming in and you simply plugged it into property. It's not the same thing. So I didn't know anyone who was into property in that sense, like had a property business. So that's why I did it, because I just wanted to be around people who were doing property full time. Right. Because I thought, and my thinking was, which I think is correct, that there's nothing new, it's tried and tested.
And there's so many other different choices for joining different institutions and groups and communities. What was it about the guys at PPN that really interested you or that caught your attention?
So, well, there were two things. One, it was in Peterborough, and I live in Stevenage, so it's close.
Logistics is always important.
You know, because realistically, if you commit to going somewhere once a month or whatever, right, and it's 5 hours away, then at times you might not be able to make it. It's just true.
Yeah.
The second thing was, when I went there, it just had like a good vibe around it.
Yeah.
That, you know, the people who were training, they would come and speak to you like normally, and they didn't think of themselves as, you know, they didn't think of themselves as some sort of big shots and those sort of things. It's just like a nice vibe, and that's kind of continued for the last couple of years. It just, you know, seemed like a good place to be.
And
whereas, you know, sometimes you go to places and you just get a bad vibe.
Yeah, of course.
You just get like a very bad vibe. Like, you know, it might have been on my doorstep, but sometimes you just go there and you think, what the hell is this?
You got to resonate. You've got to like you strike a chord with these people that you're surrounding yourself with.
100%.
And there's so many property events. There's so many communities that you've got to. I mean, I don't think there's any right or wrong with any of them. I think it's just literally whatever you feel comfortable with. It's funny, I've been to some events and there's two kind of mentor-style gurus in the room, and they're very much similar backgrounds, but one of them is a lot more energetic and the other one's a lot more downtoned. And it's funny, like, speaking to people at the end of the event, you know, which person did you like a little bit more? One of them was, you know, I like the down-to-earth guy that was a bit more humble. He's a bit quieter. I like his style more. Go to somebody else and they're like, you know what? I like the energy of the other guy much more. I think I can get something from him. So it's literally, it's like your favorite food. It's a matter of taste.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, putting that aside, I think Progressive has the longest track record because they've just been around the longest.
They've been around a while, right?
Yeah, they've been around the longest. They've been around, I think, over like 10 years or something now. So, whereas, you know, nowadays, it's like, oh, man, you'll know this. You see so many new companies. Yeah. And by companies, I mean one person. And nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But it's...
Everyone's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, but, you know, it's like, I know people who, after 6 months, they've had training companies. Like they've done it themselves for about 6 months, and they've got a training company now, which is a bit.
That's questionable. Yes, I think you'd have to. I think
obviously I'm not, you know, saying it's right or wrong or calling anyone out, but I'm just saying it's like
we're definitely not mentioning any names. But I think the point is, you are right. From my point of view, I think it's fair to put yourself on the line a little bit and say, if you want to get trained by somebody. The chances are you'd want them to have a significant amount of experience in that thing that you know, not about 6 to 12 months more than what you've got. So but then again, you can make great successes in short spaces of time as well, and especially in new kind of markets and like, you know, tech businesses and.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying from a consumer point of view, if someone's got 10 years of proven experience, and someone's got 6, I would just go for the one with 10.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not saying someone's wrong to do it, but as a consumer, I kind of have more faith in someone who's been around for 10.
Okay, let's talk about the experience within PPN which led you towards a specific strategy, which is actually a relatively new thing on our in our radar and in the property sector, because short-term lets were always typically a hotel.
Yep.
And since the advent of things like Airbnb, it's all turned on its head. There's all sorts of regulation. It's all over the world. And now it's probably come January 2019, one of the hottest topics in the property sector. And you have had a significant amount of success in it in an incredible amount of time. So let's talk about a little bit, if you don't mind, about what you've actually achieved. So you're running a service accommodation portfolio.
Yeah, so just so everyone kind of understands.
Yeah, what is service accommodation?
Yeah, so service accommodation, essentially, the easiest way to explain is Airbnb, which is that we rent apartment. Actually, I'm confusing two things here now. Service accommodation is essentially, like you said, is short-term renting.
Yeah.
Short-term rentals on Airbnb, Booking.com, those sort of websites. Now, a short-term rental, it doesn't necessarily mean one night. It could mean 1 month. It could mean 2 months. It's short-term essentially means anything which is shorter than a normal AEST contract.
Yeah.
A normal long-term residential contract, which is, I think the shortest you can get is about 6 months. So anything less than 6 months is kind of short-term for us. So I get bookings all the time, which are 3 months, but they're still short-term.
Yeah, I think you get shorter-term ASTs, but yeah, typically they're 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And anything less than that.
Yeah, precisely. So just to clarify, because a lot of people think short-term means 1 night or 2 nights. It doesn't necessarily. It can mean a week, it can mean 2 weeks, it can mean a month. Yeah. So, but shorter-term bookings, so let's say anywhere from 1 night to 3 months at a time.
I think if you go to estate agents, the minimum you'll get from them on a rental is 6 months. Typically,
well, yeah,
no one likes that either. Short-term rentals from somewhere like Foxtons, but they're 3 months.
Yeah, well, exactly.
So we're talking shorter than 3 months.
Well, exactly. So we're talking like 1 night all the way up to 3 months.
Yeah.
Now the reason it works is, and this is the analogy I use, which is, you're familiar with Spotify, right?
Yes.
So do you use Spotify or?
No, I use iTunes.
Okay. Do you know people?
Apple Music, I think.
Do you know people who? Apple Music. Well, same thing.
You use Spotify?
Well, I use YouTube Premium now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, because you can listen to the music by not.
You don't have ads and all.
You don't have ads, so you pay the subscription and you can turn it, because normally you have to have the app on, and now you can.
And you can listen in the background and all that sort of, and you can download music. So in the tube, I've got downloaded music. It's really good because you get a lot more. Because for example, like on Spotify, I don't know if you get live performances and stuff.
You don't get a lot of stuff. The reason why I
went
to
on
iTunes
YouTube
is because there's got more songs on it than Spotify, but still it's not got as much.
Yeah, but for example, on
YouTube's got everything.
Yeah, but on YouTube, I listen to a lot of like Asian classical sort of music, right? Like quality music. And a lot of the footage, a lot of the music is like raw stuff.
Right.
It's not like, professionally recorded stuff. It's kind of like a bunch of people on stage and they just sing. So YouTube Premium has that.
Yeah.
Because it's still classified as music, whereas Spotify would never have that. Right. Because there's no such album. It's just more so bunch of people. Exactly. So it's sweet. But here's the thing. Let's just say Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you want.
Yeah.
Why do people pay for those platforms when you can get music for free?
Why do people pay for those platforms?
Because all this music we're talking about, you can torrent that stuff. I'm not saying you should, by the way, but you can.
Yeah.
So why do people pay for that sort of stuff?
Because they feel it's easier. They feel like it's legal, perhaps. And I think that the quality...
Easier in what sense?
Easier than it's all in one place. It's all packaged up nicely, ready to go.
Yep. So you say convenience, right?
Convenience, absolutely.
Because it's just you open your phone, you press a bunch of buttons, and you've got the song. You don't have to download it, then put it onto your laptop, and then stick a wire in, and then transfer it across, and all that sort of stuff. But
it ain't 2001 anymore.
So 2001, that's what used to happen. Like you would go torrent music, and you would put it onto your stuff, onto your phone or whatever, right?
Like Napster and Views.
All that sort of stuff. But the only reason Spotify, YouTube Premium, all these things work is because of convenience.
Right.
So would you agree that if you make something more convenient for someone to get, they'll pay the price for the convenience?
100%.
So let's apply that principle now in property, right? Which is that what I'm doing is I'm renting a property on a long-term basis, so for 3 years, then I'm making it more convenient for people to rent it from me on a short-term basis. When people come in, they don't have to sign up for bills or the internet or sign a whole bunch of paperwork and do all that sort of stuff. They check in when they want and they check out when they want, and therefore they pay a premium for that service. And that's why that's why hotels charge so much more money than residential properties, because you can go in and out as you please. It's
Right.
convenience, right? That if you want, let's say you're coming into London for, I don't know, a month with your family.
Yeah.
Before, you would have to go and rent a long-term property or something. You couldn't
Or
just...
you pay a fortune in a hotel.
precisely.
And then you only get the room.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Whereas now
You
can
eat in the hotel restaurant every night, which
exactly
is more costly.
Exactly. Whereas now you get an Airbnb, you can check in when you want, you can check out when you want, all that sort of stuff, and it's convenience. That's why you can charge a markup. So we'll rent a property for £1,000 a month, and we'll then let it back out for like 2,000, 2,100, 2,200, because people pay the higher rates.
So
that's how the model works.
And that's how it was born. That's how the model works. And in terms of what you've been able to achieve, where are you at the moment with your service accommodation business?
So I've got about 18 properties, which are mainly, what's called as rent to service accommodation. And basically, the stuff we just talked about now, which is I'll rent a property and then I'll rent it back out as a service accommodation property. Now, a lot of people think that's subletting because it sounds like you're renting and then putting it back out. But subletting by definition is when you take a property on a long-term basis and then let it out to someone else on a long-term basis.
Yeah.
So let's say I got a property from a landlord for 3 years and then I gave it to you for 3 years. That's subletting. Whereas because we do this on company agreements, corporate agreements, we're allowed to put our clients, which is what we call them, into the properties. But essentially that's a model. That's what I've done for about the last 2 years, and we've got about 18 of them now. Mainly all rent to SA, but there are a couple we manage for other people and we just take a fee for doing that.
Very good. And this is, as you say, all it's not subletting, so it's all transparent with the landlord.
Oh, well, yeah, it's all in the contract. It's all in the paperwork which they sign, yeah.
Okay. And 18 is an incredible amount. And typically, I mean, on an average night, how much do these properties earn in terms of revenue?
So they'll fluctuate. I've got stuff which goes from £60 all the way up to more than 200.
For one night?
For one night, yeah.
And are they
because
kind of...
it's massively area dependent.
Right.
So Hertfordshire is a lot lower than something in Victoria.
Right, so all of the properties that you've got are all in Hertfordshire around Stevenage?
They're in Hertfordshire. There's a few in London, but mainly they're in Hertfordshire.
Okay. Do you find that problematic managing stuff that's kind of far away when you're based up there?
Well, no, not necessarily. The one I've got in Victoria, which I just mentioned, I've had this since 27th of April. That's when it went live on booking.com, 27th April 2017. So it's coming up to 2 years, right? And to date, I've never seen the property. I've never been there.
What?
I've never seen it.
How does that work?
Because yeah, it's a long discussion, but you can put a lot of systems in place whereby you don't. Let me ask you a different question. Why do I have to be there? To do what?
Why do you have to be there? Well, who's changing the linen?
Cleaners.
Who's doing the checkup to make sure nothing's broken?
Cleaners.
Who's checking the people in?
Self-check-in.
How does that work?
So outside the property, there's a lockbox.
Right.
We send them check-in instructions. They go to the property. They take the key out, check in, check out, put the key back. Cleaner comes in, takes the same key, checks in, cleans, checks out, puts the key back, goes back home. Done. Right? No, but it is true though. It's like, I don't know how to fix a boiler. So if a boiler was to ever break, I don't see why I would go there because I have no idea what to do anyway.
Right.
So if that was to happen, I've got a maintenance guy who goes there and does it. So I've got cleaners and I've got maintenance people. So I'm not saying no one has to be there. Like, people have to be there, but I don't have to be there.
Right. So in terms of finding the right cleaner who's trustworthy
Yep.
and plumber and that kind of thing, that takes. I mean, there's a phrase that everybody, the power team.
Yep.
So in terms of finding trustworthy people, have you found it easy, difficult? How did you go about doing that?
So there's two things. One, you have to trial people because obviously you will never know day one.
Yeah.
You can't exactly get you could get a reference, but it would be a bit tricky. So the first thing is you just kind of have to trial it out. The second thing is you can use, the biggest challenge people have is, how do I know they're cleaning it properly, right? Like, how do I know the bed's made properly and all that sort of stuff? So there's an app I use, it's called Properly. And what that does is when the cleaner finishes up, they have to take pictures of every single room and they have to submit those pictures.
Right.
So by having, systems and apps like those, you can make it a lot better than what it is like normally, where people have no control at all.
So you've got systems and processes. So when they walk into so the cleaner walks in, she sees that the bed's not done, the dishes are a bit dirty. She goes around
She's got a checklist.
She's got a checklist to make sure everything is done.
She's got a picture-based checklist.
Right.
So she has all the pictures on her phone, and so she knows exactly what it should look like when she's done.
Yeah.
And when she cleans the room, she also has to submit a picture of that room.
Oh, right. So, to say that, look, this is what it looked like by the end of that.
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
correct.
So who's checking those photos?
I mean, I can see them on my phone. I don't check them after every single clean, but I can if I want to.
So, for example, because once you've got 18 or let's say 80, it's going to be difficult to see them all. But if you get a bad review... then
well, it's one of those things that once you've had the same cleaner for a while and you know you don't get many complaints and all that sort of stuff, you don't need to micromanage.
Yeah.
It's more so, this is going back to what I said about 2 minutes ago, which is when you're testing new cleaners, it's very important to get all these pictures. A lot of my properties, I don't even bother getting the pictures anymore because I've never had any issues. The cleaners always go on time. No one's ever complained. So it's been okay.
Yeah, and you sometimes have to definitely trust people to do a good job. And the more you work with somebody, the easier it is to trust.
Yeah, it just gets easier.
And then there's a win-win situation. You're paying a salary, and
of course,
and they enjoy working with you, and they're not going to jeopardize that by doing a haphazard job. So, in terms of you haven't seen the property much, but have you met the cleaner at least?
No, I haven't met the cleaner. No, the cleaner was hired by someone else, and I've never met the cleaner. We've even changed cleaners. I've never met the new one either.
Are you going to meet her at the Christmas party?
Yeah, with 2 people. It's interesting though. It's interesting though because completely different example. I've got a flat in Battersea Park which I bought recently. Right, it's a 1-bedroom flat which I then converted into a 2-bedroom flat. Right, and bought it like viewings and all that sort of stuff. Bought it, went through the buying process. Builders came in to see how much work he needed, all that sort of stuff. The refurb happened. Like the whole process of A to Z, like the whole thing happened. I've been there twice for like half an hour each time. That's it. I've been there for like an hour and that's it. Once was to let the builders in, to show them around to get a quote. And the second time was once everything was finished and I went there. Just because I wasn't even going to go there, but the builder was like, I do want to come and have a look.
You should really come and have a look at it. It's your apartment.
Well, yeah, but it was a bit too far. So I had no interest in going. But
incredible.
I think it is different though, because traditionally people, everyone said to me, go and have a look. A part of me was like, well, he sends me pictures every now and then. What am I going to do?
I mean, that's the...
But I do know the builder, though, to be fair. I do know the builder quite well. He did, build my house. So it's like, I know the guy pretty well. It's not like he was like a random guy down the road who I said, go and do it. So that is like a bit in the asterisks that I didn't know the guy.
That's a good referral that you've given yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's one of those things that if I feel I don't have to do something, I probably won't do it. I'm just trying to always leverage.
Right.
Everyone's like, oh, lazy as shit, but I'm just trying to not do anything.
I always say sometimes the lazy people are the ones that create the most efficient systems. Because
I love making the systems. I've got so many systems. I do I've done 2 talks on systems, both like an hour long, which is about 2 hours.
Well, a business like service accommodation or strategy, however you want to call it, it really does rely heavily on some solid systems. Right?
Yeah, because there's a lot of churn. Imagine you have 10 people coming in and out on
in 10 nights.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is possible, right?
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah. So you've got high volume of people going in, going out, cleaners going in, cleaners going out, money coming in, money going out, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of churn. But I was doing a tour a couple of days ago, and see, I've got a process when it comes to systems, which is the first thing you do is you write the process out. Everything you do, step 1 to step 10, let's just say, right? So I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. The second thing is, for example, I asked a question in my talk, how many people here use forms? So it could be a tenancy form, it could be order form, it could be anything, right? Any sort of form-based stuff. So the second thing is, where can you replace a manual process with an app? So if you do forms, rather than sending a PDF, you can send an online app using a website called FormSite. It's just an online form, same thing, but it's online. So you lay the process out, you replace the manual bits with an app, and then using a software, you kind of collapse everything, so you jump from step 1 to step 10. Now you've done something which takes 5 minutes within 20 seconds.
Wow.
So if you had to do that 10 times a day, because we get a lot of guests coming in, coming out, something which would have taken 2 hours, I can do that in like 2-3 minutes now.
So like feedback forms, do you get those from?
I don't get feedback forms, but for service accommodation, we have hotel registration forms, which is, I want people's names, billing addresses, terms and conditions signed. So we have contracts, essentially, contracts.
Right.
We have a lot of those. So, imagine you have 2, 3, 4 of those a day, and it takes you 5 minutes every single time. That's easily about half an hour.
Yeah.
But if I can shrink that down into a few minutes, I've just saved half an hour.
But even so, that again, those kind of efficient systems are going to be what helps you scale your business. And in terms of things like feedback, because one of the paranoias that I've always had with service accommodation is that from time to time you're going to find that somebody hasn't fluffed the pillow right, and you might get one of these tenants that kind of want to put a bad review on and that can really affect future bookings.
Well, see, I get that question a lot, and it's like, have you ever stayed at, I don't know, the Hilton or the Marriott or something?
I've stayed in nice hotels.
Whichever nice hotel you stay at, if you go on the reviews,
immaculate to be every.
Well, yeah, fine. It's like whichever nice hotel you stay at, even if it's a 5-star hotel, if you go into the reviews, you will find some bad ones.
Yes,
you will. Like, you just will. Like,
and you're almost walking into the room looking for a reason to complain.
Yeah,
Damn it, they didn't put some coffee out.
I was in Cardiff the other day, and I stayed in this hotel, which is the only 5-star hotel in like Cardiff or something, right? And there was
only one 5-star hotel.
It's called St. David's or something. It was nice though.
Okay.
But there was I was checking out. There's a lady in the reception, literally having the biggest go I've seen in my life. I've no idea about what, but she was pissed.
All right.
Like, I've never even seen that in like a Premier Inn. Like, she was going full out. But that was a 5-star hotel.
She wanted a discount.
So what I listened to some of the conversation. I think she claimed her kids were children. Like, because if you're under 16, there was like a different rate or something.
Right.
But they were like, they're
25 years old, but they're still my kids.
They didn't, they don't look 16. So the guy was like, I was just wondering, it's like, they don't look 16. But she was like, no, they're 16, they're 16. But she went crazy, right? She went off on one. But it's one of those things that she will leave a bad review saying, terrible customer service.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really, if you have, let's say 90%, more than 90% actually, if you have, to give you a practical example, I know someone who's got a business in Blackpool, 30 amazing reviews, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, one terrible one.
You always find them.
You're always going to get one terrible one.
The comedian, I think he always talks about when everyone's scrolling around to see where they're going to go on their next holiday, and all they're looking for is the bad reviews, which is, I do the same thing. But it kind of, you get confused. So I got averages.
You
got 9 the good ones, 1 bad one.
If you've got 50 good ones and a couple of bad ones, it's like, that's life. Everyone has that.
So what's the benefit of being a super host on Airbnb? Are you a super host?
I'm not a super host, and that's for... So... shouldn't say this. So superhost, what happens is you become a superhost if you don't cancel any bookings or you comply with everything they want you to comply with. Now, I said to you before, I get a lot of long-term bookings, which are 3 months, 4 months, that sort of stuff. Now, if I've got a 4-month booking and there's one guy who's booked 2 days in the middle of those 4 months,
you gotta bounce him.
I try to move into a different apartment. I try to book a hotel for him. I try to refund him, but sometimes people just don't comply, and
Some people don't comply. I like the way you put it.
So I'm not the one complying actually, but
that's fair enough.
I mean, have you ever checked into a hotel? Like, for example, when you book a hotel, and I do this all the time. I double room, right? And I get to the hotel, and the guy says, "Oh, we had an issue. We'll give you a twin room." Happens all the time. Yeah. Right, or they move you into a slightly different hotel room or something, right, to the one you've booked, and it's like they always say that there's some sort of issue, but essentially what's happened is someone's booked a massive long-term booking, and they've rejigged stuff around to kind of make that fit.
Yeah,
I was I've got a photographer. I booked him for 6 till 7 p.m. for my event, and he cancelled 2 days before because someone gave him the full day, because my 1 hour worth of work was killing his full day.
Yeah.
So he's going to take the full day.
So you've got a lot of that.
But it happens in every business.
In terms of, I recently read that you are taking on a team to scale the business, and you're looking at taking on 1, maybe 2 employees now, quite in quick succession.
Yeah. So I hired 2.
You hired two, yeah?
I hired two.
So what are those two roles? Do you mind sharing kind of like what positions are they? Are they like your admin assistant?
I don't even know my own position, let alone. They are. I hired my first one, which I said about 6 months too late because I felt they could have done.
Is that for like acquisition of new stock? Or?
Yeah, well, because I want to move into buying stuff.
Right.
So there's a lot of research and looking into leads and just working, going through a process. So one, it was that. The second thing was just service accommodation stuff, like because we were working with some new agencies, and I need to upload all the apartments onto the new agencies, which it just takes forever. It just takes hours and hours to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was things like that. They don't have roles per se, like they don't have any specific roles or departments they're in. It's just the stuff I need to do.
Extra hands on deck. Apparently, yeah, you've only got 70 out of 1,000.
Yeah, well, I've got a system which is that. So what I was finding is I'm good at creating the process in the system in terms of how the whole thing should flow from A to Z.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be the one running the process because I can design a system so it's very easy to use, very easy to do. But then either I can do it or I can pay someone like a very, very low rate and they can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a win for them as well because the people I hire, they're in the Philippines. So the rate I pay them is like a very good rate for them.
Right.
So it's a massive win-win. Oh, it's a massive win-win. Yeah, I mean, that part of the world is very cheap.
Yeah, the labour is a lot more cost-effective than it is
yeah,
in the UK to do
some
tasks that it can be done remotely.
Of course. So
and you have to leverage that.
Of course. So my whole thinking is that I'll design the processes because I'm good at designing the processes, but I hate running the processes.
Right.
So just imagine like a deals funnel of getting a property from stage 1 to stage 10. I want the lead when it's at stage 9. Like they should be able to get it to stage 9 because a lot of you'll know this. A lot of it's not rocket science once you've got a good process around it.
Exactly.
Because if you let's say you've got a property and you buy a 1-bed and you turn into a 2-bed and you want to know what the value is going to be when it's a 2-bed. It's not rocket science. You kind of get some comparables and you find the most accurate comparables and do all those sort of things. But if you've got a good enough process, someone else can do that for you. You don't have to necessarily go and Rightmove and land registry and do all that digging. So.
In terms of I think the service accommodation, you need solid process and systems.
Yep.
But I think where it becomes really worthwhile putting in that effort to make that happen is where you have really strong yields. On a gross yield, just very high level, what gross yields are you kind of achieving? Just like kind of revenue against the value of that kind of property.
So I don't look at gross yield because obviously I'm renting property.
Ah, right.
So gross yield wouldn't affect me, but as a rule of thumb.
But you're starting to look into it now.
I'm looking into it now.
Do you do those kind of high level numbers to think, ooh, this property is going to give me £100 a night, so for £100,
so I'll give you an indication.
Worth 300.
I'll give you an indication. Like for example, the one we have in Victoria.
Yeah. We
pay market rent to the landlord, right? And on average, this is over like the last obviously 2 years. On average, it clears I think about 800 to 1,000 per month.
Right.
So when you're trying to work out your yield, this is London, obviously each area is slightly different.
Right? That's after all your costs.
Yeah, that's clearing. So obviously gross revenue would be even higher because gross includes everything. But this is your original gross plus my net.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, if you base it on that, which you'll make another maybe 800 a month or something, it pushes the yield up quite a bit.
I think when we do this again, it would be great to get an idea of how you've gotten on with the acquisition side of things. Because I know that the beauty of what you've done is that it's a very low entry level for a lot of people starting out. You don't need to have huge deposits.
I think it's the best strategy to start out because when I do my talks and stuff, I always ask the question that, for example, in this country to buy a property, you need a deposit, right?
Yeah.
What's the main source of income people use to buy the property?
Main source of income, like deposit?
Yeah, for a deposit.
Bank of mum and dad's the most common these days.
Well, let's say you don't have that.
Then you've got to earn and save.
Well, yeah, so job income, right?
Yeah.
And then I speak to people and I say, how many people don't want to work anymore? And most of the people I speak to don't want to work anymore. So it's true. No one wants to work anymore.
Everyone wants to win on X Factor.
I don't think I could quite do that, but you know what I mean though. It's like everyone wants to leave their job. So what people do is they go and buy a property. They work for years and months or whatever you want to call it. They finally get a deposit, which they then put into a property, which then makes a few £100 or whatever, right? But then Why? So I say, why don't we rent a property for £1,000 a month, make it more convenient for someone else to rent it at £2,000 a month, and take whatever's left in the middle? It's like, would you get to your goal a lot quicker that way?
And very quickly about 90-day rule in London.
Yep.
Well, how do you see that as being here to stay? Do you see that as problematic? Do you see that means that there's only opportunities in other cities?
So the 90-day rule
Do you see that as rolling out in other cities?
So the 90-day rule currently is in Amsterdam, New York, London, and I feel like there's one other place where it does exist.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, these are pretty big cities.
Yeah, I think in Amsterdam, isn't it even more tough? There's like
it's 60 days.
60
yeah, it's 60 days, not 90.
And you're not allowed to do the lease to, I think it's only homeowners that are allowed.
Oh, is it?
I don't know, it's pretty strict though.
Yeah, they've got a few rules. In terms of, there was a show at the Excel over the weekend, or a few days ago anyway, and just to clarify, the 90-day rule essentially means when you do short, when you do short-term bookings, a short-term booking could be anywhere from 1 night all the way up to less than 90 nights, so 89 nights. When you accumulate those bookings over the course of one calendar year, you can't do more than 90.
Yeah.
So if you get a 10-night booking, a 10-night booking, a 12-night booking, and 1-night booking, when you add all those up, you can only do 90 days worth of short-term bookings. After that, you need the longer-term bookings. Now, so people think a regulation has come in and they've said you can now only do 90. What it used to be was you couldn't do anything. It used to be effectively a 0-day rule. Now it's a 90-day rule. So they've actually given you a 90-day allowance where previously there was 0.
Right.
It's actually part of the Deregulation Act, not a Regulation Act.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It's deregulation, actually. It's part of the Deregulation Act of 2015.
Wow.
It used to be 0. What happened is London 2012 Olympics came around and there was a massive shortage of hotels. Like there was nowhere to stay. So they allowed people to kind of rent their places out and those sort of things. And that's how it came about. But now there was talks about getting rid of the 90-day rule because the councils don't like it. But it's been turned down because I think it also now impacts tourism.
Yeah, consumers like it. And I do understand the...
No different to Uber. When they tried to cancel Uber in London... Do you remember there was a petition for like 2 million people signed it or something?
They even kind of threw him a warning and stuff. But
2 million people signed that petition.
Things out of circulation anymore
because it's just such a better alternative.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, in terms of doing this in London, what you would have to do to comply is a few different things. The first one being you try to get the longer term bookings.
So you get like a 6 month.
Anything more than 3.
Anything more than 3.
Yeah, so insurance bookings, relocation bookings, corporate bookings, all that sort of stuff. The second thing is, if you happen to live in one of the rooms and you're renting the other rooms out, the 90-day rule doesn't apply. It only applies if it's the entire property. It doesn't apply to rooms. So even within the 90-day rule, it's not like one thing applies to everything. There's
right,
different
so it's only taking over the full flat. It's not...
so if you were living in one of the rooms, there's no 90-day rule. It's only for entire properties. It's not for rooms.
And we're just talking about rooms, flats, houses. Which ones? Because you can get private room, you can get entire flat on Airbnb, or houses. Which is the best ones that move fastest for you?
Oh, I only do entire apartments.
Entire apartments. Houses?
I think I've done one house in the past. Nothing wrong with houses. It's just the market I go for is like a corporate market, professionals, and they like being around city centres. Now, where I'm in Hertfordshire, the way those towns were built, you didn't have houses near city centres. You always had houses in like the different housing areas.
Suburbia.
Yeah, exactly. So now because of this whole PD rights and commercial conversion, now there's a ton of apartments in those central locations, but there's no houses. Like you can't, in Hertfordshire, you wouldn't get houses that close to city centres. Rarely would you get something. So it's not I've got anything against houses or that they don't work, because a lot of people do make them work. It's just more so the way Hertfordshire is laid out. And similar with London. It's like, you go to Victoria, so where are you going to find a house?
Yeah, exactly.
You might find the odd one here and there, but there's a lot of apartments here.
And in terms of there's so much. I mean, it's such a deep rabbit hole, this service accommodation, especially because it's quite new, and you obviously have immersed yourself quite deeply into it. So you've got a vast amount of experience that we'd like to tap into. But I want to quickly touch upon your LinkedIn ventures recently.
Right.
You've been quite good at
Have you seen them?
I've seen very short spurts of it, but
right.
I've noticed that you're getting quite a few good results, up to like 10,000 views in a very short space of time. Very quickly, do you want to touch upon what that's all about?
Yeah, so I've never really used LinkedIn that much. So just to give you some context, it's not like I had a ton of followers that now I've become active and everyone's liking my stuff. I used to get nothing on LinkedIn. If I got 2 likes on LinkedIn, that was like a pretty good post for me or something, you know? So what I did was I made a LinkedIn group. It's called, it's a LinkedIn engagement group. Essentially what happens is with LinkedIn, with Facebook, with YouTube, all these platforms, what happens is if you post something and you get enough activity in a short amount of time, they boost your post. So for example, let's say you do a post on LinkedIn and within the first 5 minutes you get like 5, 6, 7, 8 likes. It boosted a lot more than if you had 5 likes over the course of the next few hours.
So do you manufacture that by having a few friends that like your post straight away?
Yeah, about 120 friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a LinkedIn.
That's great, though.
I've got a LinkedIn engagement group on WhatsApp, and everyone in the group, all they do is they do a post on LinkedIn and then post it in the group, and everyone then goes and likes and comments. And what happens is it boosts everyone's post. Now, there was a guy in the group. He used to get about 500 views on average. He did a post which got about 25,000 views, because there's so many people liking and commenting your stuff. I had a post the other day which was about 111 likes. The most I ever had before doing this group was maybe like 10 likes.
So okay. So maybe we need to speak after this.
Yeah, it's just a hack. It's essentially just a hack, right?
Yeah.
Because
so you're not selling a course on this? Normally people sell these courses. This bit is kind of information for like $2,995, but today you can get it for $1,995.
Yeah, we'll see. Stay tuned. You never know. you never know. But it does work. I mean, we've tested it. It does work, and it's just an algorithm. You know, it's no different to YouTube. If you put this video on YouTube, and you get loads of people liking and commenting in the first hour or so.
Right.
It boosts us so much more than if you had it over time.
Does that marketing help your service accommodation business at this stage?
Well, see, when you say help, it depends which way, because it doesn't help me get more bookings, but it does help me meet more investors.
More investors and maybe more agents.
Well, exactly. So I've had so many people message me saying, we're interested in service accommodation, we've got a bit of money, can we do something? All the time. Because what's happening is I'm getting thousands of views and people are seeing what I do, and then a few of them will message, right? And how much does that cost? Nothing. You know, I did, because I work with a property event in Victoria, and
what property event is
it's
that?
called PPN Knightsbridge.
Okay.
And I sold their annual membership because of this thing we did together. And I did 2 Facebook posts, and I posted in my WhatsApp group, and we sold more than £8,500 worth of product.
That's amazing.
With 2 Facebook posts, and there's nothing paid advertising.
I always say marketing comes before sales. A lot of people don't get that, but I think this is testament. You did some marketing, and the sales came.
Yeah, once you build up a bit of a following, and you've got some people looking at your stuff, you don't have to spend. You don't need amazing advertising or some sort of amazing funnel which kind of leads people through. It's like there was 2 posts. There was nothing fancy about it. I just wrote something up, and we had 42 people pay about £200 each.
That's awesome.
From no advertising.
So Ahmed, it's been amazing speaking with you. I could speak to you all day. I think
This could go for a while.
This could go for a while. We do have to wrap up, but before you go, this Property People channel is all about property people and sharing ideas, experiences, problems and solutions. So I always like to ask, in terms of the property industry and where we're at right now, where do you see the biggest problem at the moment with the UK housing market?
Oh, with
the property market, commercial.
Okay, so this is from the point of view of people investing in the market.
Well,
I'll spin into that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you see, however you perceive that, commercial and residential.
Fine, I'll talk about it from an investing point of view, because I don't know much about it from what's happening with the national crisis in terms of housing. I think it's one of those times that because of Brexit and all these sort of things, a lot of people do get worried in terms of should I or should I not. Whereas if you look at data, if you look at history, this is probably the best time to get the best deals. Because if you've got a bit of money lying around and you can buy, you're much better off buying now than, in a year's time when things pick back up again, because you're just going to pay more money for the same stuff. So I think it's a case of being educated at this given moment in time, because you can actually get some sweet, sweet deals. Whereas you might not be able to get these once, everything picks back up.
Got you.
Whereas
so that's an opportunity more than the problem is that there's difficulties in the economy, And the
Well, it's like
solution is creating the opportunity for investors.
Well, if you look at the market
in.
as a whole, the interest rates are still pretty low. It's not like we have 8% interest rates.
No, it's still relatively low.
Interest rates are really low. If you're going to buy anyway, you're better off buying in this given climate than you are in a few years' time when everything picks back up again.
Yeah.
I always say it's like every year Christmas is going to come around, right? Like Christmas is going to come every single year.
Every year.
Yeah, I've got some weird analogies.
Just like summer.
Yeah, exactly. Christmas is going to come. But let's say you're very strategic about it and you plan all these sort of things. When is the best time to buy Christmas cards? Before Christmas or after Christmas?
After Christmas.
Because it goes down in value, right?
Yeah.
And you know it's going to come around next year again anyway.
Yeah.
So if you want to be proper strategic about it, you just buy it after Christmas every single year. And it's the same thing here, which is that every 10 years the property does crash, and then, sorry, not property, the economy, there is a recession every 10 odd years, and then it does pick back up. So it's no different to buying Christmas cards after, which is you buy them when they're cheap, and no different here, which is you buy when property is cheap, not when it's skyrocketing and you can't buy a damn thing.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that's it's all about having the right perspective and attitude, and that's why I like you so much, Ahmed, because you seem to have a solution for every problem, as opposed to some people that find a problem for every solution. And with that open-minded pragmatism, I think that's why you've had such great success in such a short space of time. And I hope that you can come and join us again.
Well, 100%, I'd love to.
And let us know how your acquisition to service accommodation strategy goes, how your team's growing, and how you're getting on.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'd love to come back on anytime.
Cheers,
Anytime.
Ahmed.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Make sure you click subscribe.
Oh, shit.